The Whitmore mansion gleamed like a temple of wealth, its tall windows flashing against the morning sun, marble floors polished until they mirrored the chandeliers above, and staff scurrying through its vast corridors with silent obedience, every servant in crisp uniform, every gesture rehearsed to perfection, for Alexander Whitmore, the man of the house, a millionaire whose name echoed across real estate boardrooms and exclusive clubs, demanded nothing less than flawless service, and his young wife Isabella, fragile and beautiful with her porcelain skin and expensive jewels, demanded adoration for her recent triumph, the birth of their son, Daniel, the heir to the Whitmore empire. In this kingdom of opulence stood Clarissa, a black maid hired only 3 months prior, a woman whose hands bore the history of work, whose gaze carried the sharp instinct of someone who had lived on very little yet noticed everything, but who in this household was treated as invisible, a body that moved through rooms with a tray, a rag, or a mop, dismissed as background noise to the glittering conversations of the elite. She had learned quickly that her opinions were not welcome, that the nanny in charge of the newborn, an arrogant woman named Margaret who boasted of degrees, certificates, and high society recommendations, was the authority on all things related to Daniel, and anyone who dared suggest otherwise was met with a scoff and a cutting remark. But Clarissa had not survived her own life by ignoring instincts, for she had been the eldest of 5 siblings in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the south side, where her mother worked double shifts and Clarissa often played both sister and mother, learning to read the signs of fevers, wheezing, or strange coughs, because in her world, waiting too long meant the difference between life and death. That memory lived in her still, and when she first laid eyes on Daniel, she felt something stir deep inside, a quiet pull, almost maternal, that made her linger a second longer than necessary when folding his little blankets or cleaning his nursery floors, her eyes noticing the tremble in his lips, the faint blue that sometimes crept into his skin, the shallow way his chest rose and fell when he was sleeping. At first she told herself she was imagining it, that perhaps the child was simply tired, that maybe the pale skin made everything look worse, but when she mentioned it in passing to Margaret, the nanny smirked and said, "That is why you clean floors, not take care of babies, dear. Leave the medical concerns to professionals," her voice dripping with superiority as if Clarissa had stepped out of her place. Clarissa bit her tongue but did not let go of her suspicion, and over the next days she kept watching, noticing how Daniel's cries sounded thinner, weaker, not the robust screams of a healthy newborn, and how he sometimes went still between breaths, long enough to make her own lungs tighten with fear. But the house was filled with celebration. Guests dropping by with silver rattles, diamond-studded baby clothes, and rare champagne, Isabella glowing in her silk gowns as she posed for photographs with her fragile baby in arms, Alexander shaking hands with men in suits while boasting of how his heir would grow into a titan greater than himself, and amid this noise no one listened to the quiet maid who kept sweeping corners with a worried gaze fixed on the nursery. The night of the grand dinner party, the mansion brimmed with laughter, the smell of roasted lamb, clinking glasses, and the hum of violins from the hired quartet, and Clarissa was instructed to serve hors d'oeuvres near the east wing, where she could hear faintly through the walls the monitor buzzing in the nursery, a sound no one else paid attention to because they trusted technology more than instinct. Passing the door, Clarissa heard it. The thin, strained cry of Daniel, softer than usual, weaker, like a plea more than a cry, and something inside her snapped with urgency. She pushed open the door and her heart stopped when she saw him lying pale against the silk sheets, his little chest rising too quickly, breaths rattling, lips tinged bluish, fists clenched as if struggling. Without hesitation she lifted him, his body limp in her arms, heat radiating from his tiny frame, sweat dampening his neck, and terror gripped her but she refused to freeze. She stormed down the corridor toward the dining hall, clutching him tight, whispering, "Hold on, baby, just hold on," as she burst into the glittering crowd of millionaires. The music screeched to a halt, gasps echoed, Isabella's face drained of color, Alexander's fury erupted at the audacity of a maid interrupting his banquet, but Clarissa's voice rang out over the chandeliers and shocked silence, "Something is wrong with your baby, he needs a doctor now." The words hung heavy as the nanny, red with embarrassment, rushed forward to snatch Daniel back, insisting the maid was hysterical, that babies sometimes breathe irregularly, but Clarissa refused to let go, her eyes locked on Alexander, her arms shielding the infant, her voice trembling with desperation as she said, "Look at him, look at your son," and when the millionaire's gaze dropped on Daniel's blue lips and faint whimper, the proud mask cracked, his jaw tightened, and he barked orders to call his driver, to clear the way, to summon the best pediatrician in the city. The party dissolved into chaos, guests whispering, Isabella sobbing hysterically as she followed, Margaret stammering excuses, but Alexander shoved past everyone, and Clarissa, still clutching the child, was ushered into the sleek black car that sped toward St. Augustine's private hospital, the air heavy with fear and Isabella's trembling prayers. Clarissa sat in the back seat, rocking Daniel, whispering to him as she had once whispered to her baby brother years ago, begging, "Stay with me, little one, stay with me, you're stronger than this," while Alexander barked into his phone, arranging for specialists to be ready, his voice breaking in moments of panic though he tried to hide it. At the hospital, doctors rushed the baby into emergency care, and the family was forced into the waiting room, the silence unbearable, Isabella clutching at her pearls and rocking in her chair, Alexander pacing like a caged beast, and Clarissa sitting quietly in the corner, tears streaking her face as she folded her hands and prayed. After what felt like an eternity, the chief pediatrician returned, his expression grave yet relieved as he explained that Daniel had a congenital heart defect, one that had gone unnoticed in earlier checkups, a condition that would have turned fatal within hours if not for the maid's intervention. If she had not noticed the signs and acted, the doctor said, glancing at Clarissa, this baby might not be alive tonight. The words shattered the arrogance in the room. Isabella broke into sobs and fell at Clarissa's knees, clutching her hands, whispering, "I am so sorry for ever doubting you, thank you for saving my baby," while Alexander, a man unaccustomed to bowing to anyone, turned to her with red eyes and a voice heavy with humility, murmuring, "You have given me back my son, I can never repay you." The nanny, pale and trembling, slipped into silence, stripped of her pride by the brutal truth that all her certificates had failed where the instincts of a so-called servant had prevailed. Clarissa said nothing, only nodded through tears, because she had not done it for thanks, not for status, but because her heart refused to let innocence slip away when she had the chance to act. From that night forward, everything in the Whitmore household shifted. The staff whispered of her bravery, Isabella sought her presence in the nursery more than the nannies, and Alexander, though still proud, now regarded her with a respect rare in his world of wealth, for she had saved not just a baby but the very legacy of his empire. And though Clarissa returned to her quiet work, folding sheets, polishing silver, dusting chandeliers, she carried in her soul the knowledge that she had seen what no one else had, that she had been the difference between life and death, that she, the invisible maid, had saved a millionaire's newborn, and that no wealth, no arrogance, no power could ever erase that truth.